Hi, hello everyone, it's Julie. I'm just going to give you a short one today, and it is about writing for a particular gender. So, one thing you might have noticed if you've ever tried to place a novel or looked at the categories, the names of the categories in a bookstore, in a catalog, on a website, you will find that they're pretty gendered. And I hope that this is something that is changing, but for the time being, there is a lot of stuff that's just labeled women's fiction, fiction for boys, things like that. And even when it's not explicitly stated, you're still going to find an awful lot of merchandising that does its thing with a certain gender in mind. And so, of course, one of the things that you've got to do as a writer is keep the market in mind. And so that would subtly encourage you, or even sometimes explicitly encourage you, to deliberately tailor your writing to a particular gender. And that is especially if you're writing in a very gendered genre, such as military fiction or romance. So, what I want to say is that I think people should start steering away from that. They should try to write what they want to write a certain story the way they want to write it, and pay less attention to what particular gender is supposed to be reading their work. What I would like to see, and this is just maybe personal opinion, I guess, this is not necessarily successful publishing advice, but I feel like it adheres to where I'd like to see the industry going, and where a lot of people who appreciate gender diversity in publishing would also like to see the industry going. You should try to focus on making your stuff accessible to any gender. And I think that that is for several reasons. One of them, of course, is that whenever we write for a particular gender, assuming only one gender is going to be reading what we're writing, we're first of all cutting off around half of our potential audience by tailoring it so much. Number two, we are possibly going to be spreading stereotypes by trying to write to a particular gender in order to make it fit preconceived notions of what a certain gender likes. We tend to repeat those things because we think that's what that gender likes. And this is especially relevant when maybe you're a writer who writes in a genre that is dominated by one gender or another, or you are a person of one gender who's trying to write for a different gender. So that can be very dangerous for some of us, is that we're going to perpetuate stereotypes in our writing as an attempt to relate, or as an attempt to do what we think everybody wants. We may just be kind of repeating things to the next generation or to our own generation that are not necessarily true, and also may not be healthy for us to believe as a group. So, I'm not going to go into specifics, but of course, especially in books that are written for men and boys, we get a lot of stuff about how boys are supposed to not show their emotions, or boys are supposed to be protective of women to the point that they assume that they can't do anything. And of course, you will see a lot of anger is the only acceptable emotion for a man to have, and all these other emotions are signs of weakness. And I think that a lot of our fiction buys into that and teaches those messages, even if they don't come from within our families or our social groups. We'll see them in our media, and we as media creators, we have a responsibility to not repeat those things. Whereas stuff that's written for women, a lot of times we focus our writings on relationships, on passive characters, on being chosen, on being appealing, on putting relationships above all else, and on focusing on our children. We often don't make women the focus of action stories, or stories that aren't about our partners. And then finally, of course, I'd like to say that when you heavily gender one of your writings, it's a bad message for people who don't feel strongly that they are either a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, or somebody who, if you're either, not strongly one of those genders, or you actually are agender or non-binary in some way, there just aren't any books that are catering to you when stuff is this gendered. So you kind of have to always feel like this this industry is not writing anything that's designed to be relevant to you. As a woman and as a little girl who read a lot, I did find that I didn't relate to a lot of what they were telling me that little girls want to be when they're older and whatnot. It didn't seem like the people writing this for girls knew me or knew what I would like. But then I also found it alienating to read books that were in science fiction and fantasy genres. They were, at least at the time, so heavily focused on assuming that they had male readers that I also kind of felt like they weren't including me or speaking to me or assuming that I would even see it because of the messages about women or the fact that everything was so masculine in these stories. Yeah, I could still read them, I could still enjoy them, but I didn't feel included. And I think that is sort of changing now, but it's changing in a certain way where it's only the minority of science fiction and fantasy books that are kind of doing it without making the feminine fantasy into like paranormal romance and whatnot. And romance is not a bad thing. It's not just a feminine thing, but you often see the covers and the marketing as explicitly attempting to appeal to straight women. Again, not a bad thing, but it is bad when that's the only thing available that's science fiction or fantasy with women in mind. So I think that I don't have a whole lot of advice for how to do this so much as try not to do it consciously. Try not to say, well, I'm doing this because girls like this. I'm doing this because boys like this. I've seen a lot of really good media lately that is doing a fantastic job not seeming inherently gendered. And it's not only just because they have characters of multiple genders, but also because they're not gendering the things that those characters do. Just because a boy is doing this does not mean that it's a masculine thing. It's a thing he's doing. And, if he's doing something that usually women would do in their stories, that doesn't make that a feminine boy. It's just a boy doing things. So, just like, of course, we know in today's world that, just about every profession that exists can be done by any gender. We still have these preconceived notions about who's better at it or who's more likely to be doing it, to the point that if you mention an elementary school teacher without saying what pronoun that person uses, you'll find that a lot of people just automatically fill in she or start thinking of a woman until or unless they are corrected. And, so those things are still there. They're still expected. And it's okay to write as if those expectations are still part of our world, because they are, but you don't have to embrace them in your writing. You don't have to continue to ingrain those ideas that those are what's expected, or that those are going to continue to be the right way of the world. So anyway, try to focus if you're writing something that, especially if it's in a genre that is heavily tilted toward either men or women, see what you can do about changing genders on some of your characters, or instead of just inherently assuming that a character who is female will be, the healer in your magical group. You don't have to make a big point out of, I have a female brawler and a male healer. You don't have to address that in the story. You can just make it something that is. And if it's not inherently part of the character that they have to be a certain gender, why not try a different gender and see if you can experiment a little bit. And I feel like to some extent this will be taken as transgressive, but that doesn't have to be the point of it. It can just be what is. And I feel like that is a good place for us to be moving as a society, so that we attach fewer value judgments to things that certain genders want to do. So that's going to be all I'm going to say on that subject. If you want to ask any questions or share some examples of some good and some bad things that you've seen in media with regards to gender, I would love to hear it. And I will see you guys next time.